Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome to my third tag video this week. Hope you're not tired of these at this point. If you are, well, I'm making them anyway because I thought the tags were so great. This is the Fab Four Tag created by Tom over at LA Books, inspired by watching the new Beatles documentary called Get Back, which is like 6 hours from Peter Jackson, which, you know, Peter Jackson, really long movies. Who's shocked? Really long movies divided into 3 parts. Who's shocked? Which Tom watched and which I watched and which I found to be really engrossing, in part just because I was really fascinated by how the creative process works with a group of 4 very different, individualistic, successful at this point people, how they made that all work. And the truth is they made it all work by essentially making George Harrison miserable, it always seems like to me, which is sad because George is my favorite member of the Beatles. But essentially what Tom has come up with is he's come up with 10 prompts based on either Beatles lyrics or inspired by or prompted by Beatles lyrics or by things members of the Beatles said. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Prompt 1, just fell out of bed, found out what key I had dreamed it in, and I played it. That was Paul McCartney talking about the song yesterday. So then the prompt is a book you dreamed about or that inspired one of your dreams. So I'm going to go with The Deerslayer by James Finnemore Cooper, kind of maybe a choice which might seem a little odd since this is, you know, a mid-19th century American novel following an archetypal American character named Natty Bumppo, Nathaniel Bumppo, the Deerslayer, etc., who features in Cooper's Leather Stocking Tales. I haven't read a lot of James Finnemore Cooper. I probably should because I thoroughly enjoyed The Deerslayer. But The Deerslayer takes place around a lake in upstate New York, and I forgot the name of the real lake. But in the book, the lake is called Lake Glimmermere. And it involves a man and his 2 daughters who live on the lake. Literally, the man has built a cabin on piers out in the lake as a way of protecting himself and his family from, you know, Native Americans, whoever else may come by. Now, I have to be honest with you, because the time period in which this book was written and set, Native Americans are depicted as stereotypes and caricatures, and there's nothing, you know, everything about that is wrong. But the thing about the book that I thought was great, and the thing that really attracted the book, and the thing that has caused me to dream, is the description of Lake Glimmermere itself and the house on the water. I have dreamed about living in that cabin, owning that cabin, paddling a canoe up to that cabin, fishing from the piers of that cabin on more than one occasion. This kind of idyllic, beautiful, natural place. And so The Deerslayer is my choice for a book that's inspired, or a book that I've dreamed about or inspired one of my dreams. Prompt number 2 is Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. That's John Lennon lyric. A book that talks about drugs or that was written under the influence of drugs. I'm going to go with The Dog Soldiers by Robert Stone. I don't see this book talked about very often here on BookTube, and I don't know that I've ever actually talked about it, but essentially this is really, I think, in a lot of ways the novel which kind of best captures the disillusionment with the 60s and what I think of generally as the increased cynicism of the 70s, and it centers around a heroin deal where one of the characters, who's a journalist who covered the war in Vietnam, disillusioned by his experiences there, essentially decides that he's going to, you know, chuck all of his own kind of moral ideas and try to get rich by having another character who's a merchant marine smuggle heroin into the United States. This leads to that character feeling like he's being followed and all kinds of things, and to kind of show the breakdown of trust and society and, you know, stuff like that. And you know, it is about drugs, it is about drug dealing, it is about using drugs, and I think it fits this prompt pretty well. Prompt number 3, we thought we'd be really big in Liverpool. That was a Ringo Starr quote. A book about someone who had far more success than they expected, or a book that was much more successful than the author expected. So I went with, you know, Balzac here. I almost always find a way to work Balzac in. And one of my favorite Balzac novels is The Black Sheep. This is a story which revolves around two brothers and the relationship with their mother and their housekeeper, and it kind of bridges the country and the city, which is one of the things that Balzac likes to do. But the two brothers are opposite in their kind of devotion to family. They're opposite in character. And one of the brothers is an artist, has a real artistic bent, and he's far more successful as an artist than he imagined he would be, coming from a provincial area. And at the end, they have a really big success, which was unexpected. Let's see, prompt number 4. Sitting on a cornflake waiting for the van to come. Cuckoo Kajube. Anyway, that's from John Lennon. A surreal book, or a book with surreal elements that you enjoyed. I'm going to go with The Antiquarian by Gustavo Favron Patreu. This book is surreal. There's no way around it. I'm not even sure that I'm capable of describing all the weirdness that exists in this book, but it essentially comes down to a story about a man named... one of the characters' name is Daniel. I can't remember if he's the guy who's been accused of murders in a psychiatric hospital, and a friend of his who is into literature and books, and he's some kind of a linguist. Anyway, the character who is not in the asylum kind of goes on this quest to figure out exactly what's happened, has this friend of his killed these people, and it's set in a South American city that's not real, and the city itself is like set up on a circle or a spiral, and the plot circles and spirals, and there are all kinds of strange elements. There's the character in the psychiatric hospital's sister, who pops in and out and says incredibly strange things, which cause the main character to try to investigate. There is there's organ theft and stealing in black market, and books covered in human skin, and kind of a twinning process. And anyway, it's just a really surreal book. It's not one I think I could describe better than I just have here without rereading it, but it is, I did thoroughly enjoy that book. Prompt 5, The White Album, a book you loved that has a minimalist cover or is written in a minimalist style. So I'm going to go with Tell Me How It Ends, an essay in 40 questions by Valeria Luiselli. The cover itself reminds me a little of the White Album, even though it's a creamy color and there are actually words on the cover. But this basically is a work of nonfiction in which Valeria Luiselli kind of explores and I think brings to light a lot of things about the situation along the United States border with illegal immigration going on, and undocumented immigrants, in particular with children who end up in the United States, and how they're processed, and the injustices of all that. And it was really powerful, so powerful, even though it's not very long. It's only about 120 pages. I read it in one day. I started reading it at breakfast before work. This is back before I was retired, and I finished reading it on my conference period at school, which happened to be the first period of the day. So just a really powerful book, but has a minimalist cover and a fairly minimalist style. Prompt 6, Little Darling, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. Here Comes the Sun, George Harrison. I told you George is my favorite for a reason. A book of poetry that you found uplifting. Well, I don't read a lot of poetry, and when I do, it has a tendency not to be uplifting. So I just went kind of in a general sense, in a more general one, with Volume 2 of Oxford Anthology of English Poetry, which basically contains exactly what you think it has. It contains poems by English poets. There's a Volume 1. This one goes from Blake to Heaney, and I do occasionally read poems from here. I've read through a lot of the poems in the past, not that I have a great memory or understanding of poetry, but for whatever reason I saw these books in a bookstore a long, long time ago, and I really wanted them, and they have been a valuable resource to me and a place I can go and read poetry if I want to. So some of the poems in there are uplifting. That's the best I could do with that. Prompt 7, A Day in the Life, an experimental book that's very uncommon for its content and format and yet works well. I'm going to go with our own Marc Nash's Three Dreams in the Key of G. This is an incredibly... I'm not sure Marc's comfortable with me labeling his novel experimental, but that's, to me, maybe it feels like an experiment because it involves the actual human genome. Maybe that's why I picked it. It could be exactly that prosaic. This basically is a really involved novel involving, the actual human genome, a woman named Jean Ohm who lives in Belfast, and a woman named Jean who lives in Florida, and each is kind of involved with, each one's story involved has some kind of feminist overtones to it. It involves women. The human genome itself is depicted as a woman who is not always happy with what's happened. The chapters alternate. It has pictographs that let you know kind of whose story is being told. Sometimes the text appears. I was hoping to find a place. Sometimes the text appears in columns side by side. Sometimes there are graphics in here. Yeah. It's just, to me it really worked. I'm pretty sure I didn't understand everything that Marc intended, but the kind of just interest in how somebody thought all this up and put it all together, and then the wordplay, which is incredible in here, really made it a successful book for me. Prompt 8. Over half of Americans who are 45 or older attribute the Beatles split to Yoko Ono. Which, by the way, in the Get Back documentary, Paul McCartney actually kind of like has a premonition that one day people are going to say that Yoko Ono broke up the Beatles because she sat on an amp. He seems to be really dismissive of that idea. I'm not willing to put the blame on Yoko either. If you watch the documentary, I think it has as much to do with the difference between what Paul and John wanted, and then what I really do think is oftentimes their shabby treatment of George Harrison. Probably had more to do with it than anything. But anyway, so then the prompt is a book about a woman who is unjustly blamed or accused of something. I'm going to go with Janie from Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Were Watching God. Essentially, Janie wants more from life than just to get married to a man who has enough money to take care of her. She wants excitement, she wants adventure, she wants to break from the kind of box in which an African-American young woman living in Florida in the 10s, 20s would be subjected to, and she essentially finds herself involved in relationships with a number of men, each time hoping that that man is going to be the person who can help her, and give her the chance to fulfill who she is and who she wants to be, and give her the life she wants. And she's disappointed each time, and each time she is accused of breaking up the marriage, of doing something that breaks up the marriage. In one case, perhaps, she's accused of committing a murder. And in the end, I think we're led to believe that she finds fulfillment living her life without a man, independently. Which I found to be it's just a great book. If you haven't read it, you definitely should. Prompt 9, limitless undying love which shines around me like a million suns and calls me on and on across the universe, from John Lennon. Who else? A book that opened your mind and made you think of the universe in a new way, either physically or spiritually. I went with Lost in Math by Sabine Hossenfelder. It's Lost in Math, How Beauty Leads Physics Astray by Sabine Hossenfelder. I've read some, believe it or not, I do read physics books intended for, non-physics experts from time to time. And I'd kind of really gotten caught up at one point in string theory and multi-universe, the many-universes theories and things like that. And I really enjoyed this book because Sabine Hossenfelder comes along and kind of pokes holes in those things by suggesting that a lot of what the physicists who propound these theories say is proof that these things are true, has to do with their faith in the symmetry or the beauty of mathematical formulas. And that perhaps what they're saying, or perhaps that's not exactly the way to figure out all the things that are true on the subatomic level. Perhaps that our desire to find physicists' desire to find a beautiful mathematical solution is actually keeping them from embracing perhaps better solutions. And I just thought that was great. And then prompt 10, Prompt 10, Mother Mary Comes to Me, Speaking Words of Wisdom, Let It Be, from Paul McCartney. A book that you found very powerful and moving despite its apparent simplicity. I think I could mention almost any William Trevor novel or story worth reading. But in this case, I went with the one I read most recently, and that was Love in Summer. As always, almost always true with William Trevor's stories, this involves, just regular people living in small town, in this case, in small town Ireland, whose lives become incredibly emotionally complicated. A young woman who was an orphan, who essentially was kind of contractually married to a local farmer whose wife had died. She finds fulfillment with that man. He is kind, he is considerate to her, but she feels no real love or passion for him. She meets another man who is, in fact, leaving his family home, selling off his decaying family home, and moving away. And they have a relationship which, if you know anything about William Trevor, doesn't end as a happy ending. And I thought it was really powerful and moving, as I find most works by William Trevor. So the only thing left to do is to tag people. So let me look up some people to tag here. Okay, so I'm going to tag 3 people. I want to tag Wiebke from One Book, One Review, because she left a comment saying she didn't know people hated the Beatles, because I made some mention of that in another video. I want to tag Jen the Librarian. I don't know if Jen's going to watch this video or not, but I'd like to have her input as someone who is younger than me. By the way, I assume Wiebke is younger than I am as well. And then perversely, I'm going to tag Marc Nash, because I happen to know Marc's really not a Beatles fan, so it might be fun to kind of torture Marc and have him do this video. Anyway, there you go. There is the Fab Four book tag. Thank you, Tom, for creating this awesome tag and for tagging me to do it. I'll leave a link to Tom's video down below and to the channels that I tagged. Look forward to your comments in the comment section below, and as always, thank you for watching.